Okay, everyone. Welcome back to our economics class. So let's go ahead and start the slides. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about efficiency and equity this session. In this, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me, please? Does everybody hear me? Yes, beautiful. So the objectives of this session, yeah, it's recording already. So we've defined efficiency, distinguish between value, price, and consumer surplus, distinguish between cost, price, and producer surplus, and explain conditions under which markets move resources to their highest valued uses and resources inefficiently in our economy. And finally, somebody's microphone is on. Could you please turn it off? And explain the main ideas about fairness and evaluate claims and market results in unfair outcomes. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So more for less. People are constantly striving to get more for less. What does it mean? Could we get more out of our scarce resources if we use them differently, or is our use efficient? Are market outcomes fair outcomes? This chapter explains the conditions under which competitive markets achieve efficient outcome, and it describes the sources of inefficiency and explores the concept of fairness. So basically, we are trying to get most of it. We try to get more out of less, so to use it efficiently, right? So we have certain resources, they are limited, and we want to make sure that we are using them efficiently and use the market fairly, okay? So efficiency, like a refresher. An efficient allocation of resources occurs when they produce the goods and services that people value most highly. So efficient allocation of resources is when we produce the goods and services that people value most highly. So there's stuff that people value most. We want to make sure that we produce them. So resources are allocated efficiently when it is not possible to produce more of a good or service without giving up some other good or service that is valued more highly. So basically, they are allocated efficiently when we cannot, or it's not possible to produce more of a good which is valued highly by giving, which is more of a good or service without giving up some other good that is more highly valued. So it's just very simple common sense. If, let's say, we have two services or goods, one of them is higher valued, it's efficient allocation. If we are not supposed to give up the one which is higher value to produce the other one, we want to make sure we always produce the one which is higher valued more. So efficiency is based on value, which is determined by people's preferences. So people's preferences will tell us or show us what are the values. What is marginal benefit? We have talked about marginal cost and all that, but now we want to talk about marginal benefit. The marginal benefit is the benefit a person receives from consuming one more unit of a good or service. So we can measure the marginal benefit from a good or service by the dollar value of other goods or services that person is willing to give up to get one more unit of it. So the concept of decreasing marginal benefit implies that as more of a good or service is consumed, this marginal benefit decreases. We have discussed that before. So marginal benefit increases when we produce a certain amount of that product, but it tend to decrease in increasing because the fact is marginal benefit is the extra unit benefit we get for every extra unit of that service or product that we use. But as we discussed, like the first soda that we get gives us, let's say, one marginal benefit. The second would be one, the third would be one, but the fourth would be less than one extra marginal benefit because we have already quenched our thirst and we're not thirsty anymore, right? So that is the fact that we're discussing here. As you can see here, the efficiency shows that decreasing marginal benefit from each additional slice of pizza, as you can see here. Then marginal cost is the opportunity of producing one more unit of a good or service. The measure of marginal cost is the value of the best alternative foregone to obtain the last unit of the good. So basically here we are discussing the opportunity cost, which is producing one more unit of a good or service, which is the measure of marginal cost is the value of the best alternative foregone. So we had some alternative which we didn't do, and instead we did that. So what is that value? That is marginal cost. We can measure the marginal cost of the good or service by the dollar value of the goods or service that a person must give up to get one more unit of it. So what you need to give up to get the other unit of the product service is called marginal cost. And the concept of increasing marginal cost implies as more of a good or service is produced, its marginal cost increases. So this is also the fact that when you produce more of a product, your marginal cost of that product will increase on the same token that your marginal benefit will decrease, right? Okay, so here you see increasing marginal cost for each additional slice of pizza measured here. So marginal cost, marginal benefit, that increases, this decreases. Very simple. Okay. Efficiency and inefficiency. So if the marginal benefit from a good exceeds its marginal cost, producing and consuming more of that good uses resources more efficiently. So if the marginal benefit that we get is more than marginal cost, then producing and consuming more of that good resources uses resources more efficiently. So we said we want to do use resources efficiently, right? So when your marginal benefit is higher than marginal cost, when you do that, it is called an efficient use of resources. So if the marginal cost of good exceeds its marginal benefit, producing or consuming less of that good uses resources more efficiently. So in the first scenario, which is on your left-hand side, can you guys hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, that is great. So on the left-hand side, our marginal benefit is more than our marginal cost. So producing more of that resource will use the resources, producing more of that good or service uses the resources efficiently. Well, on the right-hand side, our marginal cost is higher than our marginal benefit. So producing more of that product is using the resources less efficiently. But if you produce less, it's more efficient use of your resources. Are you following me so far? Everybody's following? Any questions so far? No questions? Okay, yes, a bit complicated. Let's do it one more time. You see here, on the left-hand side where the pink arrow is, your marginal benefit, which we said the amount of benefit you get out of using one extra unit of a product or resources, is more than your marginal cost, which is the amount of cost that will cost you or the amount of value you have to forego to be able to produce this certain good rather than the other good, right? So when your marginal benefit is more than your marginal cost, it is efficient use of resources if you use or produce more of that product or service, which is the case on the left-hand side. But on the right-hand side, your marginal cost is higher than your marginal benefit. So in this case, producing more of that good, the benefit you get is less than the cost. So it's not an efficient use of resources to produce more. Actually, efficient use of resources is to produce less. Okay, how about now? Is it clear? Better now? Okay, awesome. So, efficiency. If the marginal cost of a good equals its marginal benefit, resources are being used efficiently. So the optimum, the best point is where your marginal cost and marginal benefit equals. That's like efficient use of your resources, which is this red dot in the middle. Then value, price, and consumer surplus. So, what is value? The value of one more unit of a good or service is its marginal benefit, which we can measure as the maximum price that a person is willing to pay. So, the value of one more unit of a good or service is its marginal benefit, which we can measure as the maximum price that person is willing to pay. So in the value part, we have a couple concepts. One is the marginal benefit. So the marginal benefit that we can measure it by the price the person is willing to pay, we call it value. A demand curve for a good or service shows the quantity demanded at each price. So on a demand curve, we can see how much of a quantity of that product is demanded at a certain price. The demand curve also shows the maximum price that consumers are willing to pay at each quantity. So the demand curve also shows the maximum price. So if it exceeds that price, what would happen? We discussed in the first sessions. The quantity demanded will decrease because the price is, we need an equilibrium, which is the price that the customer is willing to pay to get the product is what they will go for that quantity. If the price changes, I mean the quantity would change. So that is about value. This figure shows these two ways of interpreting a demand curve. In part A, which is here, shown here, the demand curve tells us the quantity the customers plan to buy at a given price. So in this chart, you see the quantity that customers are willing to pay to get that product. So for these number of pizzas, let's say for 10 pizzas, customers will pay $15. In part B, shown here, the demand curve tells us the maximum price that consumers are willing to pay for the given quantity, which is the same. So the customers are willing to pay maximum of $15 for 10. So maximum price willing to be paid for 10,000 pizzas is 10. So and they won't be willing to pay any more than that at this price. Sorry, with this quantity. So the price measures the marginal benefit of the good at a given quantity. So at a certain quantity, the price of a given good is here, as you can see it. So what is consumer surplus? Consumer surplus is the value of a good minus the price paid for it. So consumer surplus is the value of a good minus the price you pay for it, summed over the quantity bought. So it's measured by the area under the demand curve and above the price paid to up to the quantity bought. So as you can see here, consumer surplus is here. Consumer surplus is the price. The price paid is the market price, which is the same for each unit bought. The quantity bought is determined by the demand curve. And the blue rectangle here shows the amount paid for pizzas. So this is the market value, this is the consumer surplus, and this is the amount paid. So the green triangle, which is here, the consumer surplus from a pizza. So one more time. So consumer surplus is the value of a good minus the price paid for it, summed over the quantity bought. And in the chart, you can see it here. So the green triangle is our consumer surplus. The blue rectangle is the amount paid for it. And the red line is our market price. Okay. Value, price, and consumer surplus. So the consumer surplus on 10th slice is $2 that the consumer is willing to pay minus 1.50 that she does pay, which is 50 cents a slice. Okay? So a simple calculation here, as we said, so we are looking at 10 slice of pizza. That is $2, right? And the consumer is willing to pay minus the 1.50. Right? So there is 50 cents a slice. There is consumer surplus. As you can see, there's just a 50 cents a slice difference. So this is consumer surplus from 10 slice of pizza. So because the market price is set at 150, so at the 10th pizza, the consumer has a surplus of 50 cents. You see? Okay. Are we good? Are we clear so far? It's very simple because it's like it's set at 2, but market price is at 150, so there is a consumer surplus of 50 cents, which is very, very simple. Okay. Then cost, minimum supply price, and supply. So the cost of one more unit of a good or service, is its marginal cost. So the cost of one more unit of a good or service is marginal cost, which we can measure as the minimum price that a firm is willing to accept. So that is regarding the firm that produces the product or service. So the cost of one more unit of that service to to create that product is marginal cost. A supply curve of a good or service shows the quantity supplied at each price. The supply curve also shows the minimum price the producers are willing to accept at each quantity. So a supply curve, as we discussed before, shows the quantity supplied at each price. A supply curve shows the minimum price that the producers are willing to accept at each quantity. Okay, as you can see here, this figure shows these two ways of interpreting the supply curve. In part A, which is this part, the supply curve tells us the quantity that producers plan to sell at a given price. So at the price of $15, they are willing to sell 10,000 of pizzas per day. So that is our supply curve. In part B, shown here, shows the supply curve tells us the minimum price that the producers are willing to accept for a given quantity. So this price measures the marginal cost of producing that given quantity. So it's just looking at it a different way. So at that certain price, they're willing to produce this amount, or at this amount, they're willing to accept this price. You know, it's just two ways of looking at the same thing. So cost, price, and producer's surplus. Producer's surplus is the price of a good minus marginal cost of producing it, summed over the quantity sold. Okay? And the producer's surplus is measured by the area below the price and above the supply curve up to the quantity sold. Next figure will show you how it works. As you can see here, the blue amount, the price is the market price, which is the same for each unit sold. So the red line is our market price, which is the same for every unit that is sold. The quantity sold is determined by the supply curve, and the red area shows is the total cost of producing the pizza. So the red, or the kind of pinkish color area, is the cost of production. And then the blue area is called the producer's surplus. So producer's surplus, as we discussed here, is the price of a good minus the marginal cost. So it's actually what the producers benefit from it, right? It's the cost minus the price, you know. So producer's surplus on the 50th pizza is 15 that producers receives minus 10. That is its cost, which is 5, which is the benefit. Very simple. Okay? Is the competitive market efficient? So that's our next question. Efficiency of competitive equilibrium. This figure shows that a competitive market creates an efficient allocation of resources at an equilibrium. So in the equilibrium, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. As you can see here, the quantity that is demanded and the quantity that is supplied are meeting each other at 10 and 15. So on 10,000 of pizzas per year, the 15, the price, will give us an equilibrium of efficient allocation of resources. So what happens on the left and right hand side of equilibrium? On the left-hand side, marginal benefit equals marginal cost, so the quantity is efficient, right? So the sum of consumer and producer surplus is maximized at the efficient level of output. So at the at the at the maximize at the level, the sum of the consumer and the producer surplus is maximized at this efficient level. So at the efficient market where we have equilibrium, what it says, we have this maximized amount of the sum of consumers and producers surplus, which means that they are at their maximized level. But as you can see, like on the left-hand side, we had the consumer surplus before and producer surplus before that the red dot. So the way you could look at it is marginal cost is also your margin or opportunity cost, and the marginal benefit is also the value of the pizza. So value is a bit different from the money. It's not just the price, it's the benefit you get at the price that you pay for that extra unit of the product, which is your marginal benefit. And then we have invisible hand. Adam Smith came up with this invisible hand. The idea of wealth nations implied that competitive markets send resources to their highest value used in society. So the highest value used in society happens at competitive markets. Consumers and producers pursue their own self-interest and interact in the markets. So we need to understand that consumers and producers are always pursuing their own self-interest, and market transactions generate an efficient, highest valued use of resources. And invisible hand at work means that the invisible hand works in our economy today. It coordinates the self-interest of producers and consumers of computers, oriented in just about every good or service that you can think of. So one more time, invisible hand implies the competitive market sends resources to their highest valued use in society. And it works for any goods or services. So next cartoon shows us the invisible hand sometimes works in a surprising way. Actually, it's on their book. It's not in the slides, unfortunately. I don't have it here. But it's on your page 109. Okay, I don't have it in the slides, unfortunately. Okay. So, obstacles to efficiency. Markets are not always efficient, and there are obstacles to their efficiency. The price ceilings and floors, taxes, subsidies and quotas, monopoly, public goods, external costs, and external benefits. What are these? We're going to discuss some of these in the future. I mean, most of these, and some of them we have already touched a bit. Basically, price ceiling is the maximum price. Price floors is the minimum price that the suppliers are willing to accept. Taxes and subsidies and quotas, those are mostly the government's ways to intervene in the market, and monopoly and all that. Public goods are those goods that are open to public. External costs and external benefits are also those other than the costs and benefit that you just directly get from the product. Okay, so all these will be the obstacles to have an efficient market, right? So we have, because of that, we will have underproduction and overproduction. Underproduction being producing less than what you should produce, and overproduction is producing more than you should produce. So obstacles to efficiency lead to underproduction and overproduction and create a deadweight loss, a decrease in consumer and producer surplus. So because of the hurdles and obstacles to efficient market, we'll have these problems. Is the competitive market efficient? So figure A shows the effects of underproduction. You see that gray area is our deadweight loss. The efficient quantity is 10,000 pizzas a day. If production is restricted to 5,000 pizzas a day, a deadweight loss arises from consumption. If we couldn't, for some reason, because of like technology or some problem, we couldn't go to 10,000 pizza, you would have a deadweight loss of, gray area that you can see shaded because we are not able to produce more. So we will lose production at the same time the use or consumption from the customers. So we at an efficient market we wouldn't have a deadweight loss, but in actuality of the case, we sometimes do have a deadweight loss. Okay, so then figure B shows here the effect of overproduction. So sometimes we have overproduction. At the 15, we are actually overproducing. So the demand is less and the supply is more. So efficient quantity 10,000 pizzas a day. If the production is expanded to 15,000 pizzas a day, the deadweight loss arises from overproduction. So now we want to see if the market is fair. So the ideas about fairness of the market will be divided into two. It's not fair if the results isn't fair, or it's not fair if the rules aren't fair. So we have two ways of looking at things, right? First, we want to see if the market, the competitive market is fair. So for us to judge whether it's fair or not, we have two ways. We would either say it's not fair because the results is not fair, or it's not fair if the rules aren't fair. Okay? So it's not fair if the rules isn't fair. So the idea that it's not fair if the rules isn't fair is started with utilitarianism, which is a principle that states that we should strive to achieve the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So the utilitarian approach says that we should go for the greatest happiness for the greatest number. If everyone gets the same marginal utility from a given amount of income, and if the marginal benefit of an income decreases as income increases, taking $1 from richer person and giving it to poorer person increases the total benefit. Only when income is equally distributed has the greatest happiness been achieved. So this is one of the way of looking at things. So in this scenario, we believe that we want to get the greatest happiness for the greatest number, right? So we know that for a given amount of income, marginal benefit of income decreases as income increases. So for a rich person, as his income increases $1, he would increase less of marginal benefit, whereas for a person who is poor, and that $1 increases his marginal benefit more. So in a utilitarian approach, giving his dollar, the rich guy, to a poor guy would make sense. And then, is the competitive market fair? So the figure shows how the distribution increases efficiently. Tom is poor and has a high marginal benefit of income, okay? Jerry is rich and has a low marginal benefit of income. Taking $1 from Jerry and giving them to Tom until they have equal incomes increases total benefits, as you can see. Total benefit is what they get on the line, you know. So as you can see, Tom has a very low marginal benefit of income. I mean, Tom has a very high marginal benefit of income, and Jerry has a very low one because he's rich. So that's what we were trying to explain. So is the competitive market fair? Again, utilitarianism ignores the cost of making income transfers. So recognizing those costs leads to a big trade-off between efficiency and fairness. Because the big trade-off is John Rawls proposed that income should be redistributed to a point at which the poorest person is as well off as possible. So what the utilitarianism doesn't acknowledge is there is a cost of making that income transfer. So this would be a big trade-off. So if we want to do that, it will cost us a lot. And because of that big trade-off, Mr. Rawls proposed the idea that the income should be redistributed to a point which first person is as well off as possible. So going back to fairness, now if it's not fair if the rules aren't fair, the idea that it's not fair if the rules aren't fair is based on the symmetry principle, which is the requirements that people in similar situations be treated similarly. So the result was different, but this is just the rules. So the principle, symmetry principle, means that at a certain situation, similar situations, people should be treated similarly. And then we would say it's fair. So is the competitive market fair? Going back to the same question. In economics, this principle means equality of opportunity, not equality of income. So basically, fairness is based on two rules. The state must create and enforce laws that establishes and protects private property, and private property may be transferred from one person to another only by voluntarily exchanging it, not just by force. Because in the first one, we were trying to getting the highest value from numbers, but we were forcing someone to give out $1, being Jerry, to Tom. Jerry being rich, Tom being poor. But in this case, you're saying, at a certain situation, each person having similar resources would be treated similarly. So rules that are required to set that tone is that state must create and enforce laws that establishes private property, and also it could be transferred only voluntarily, not by force. Okay. So, is there any questions so far? Any questions, any comments? Anybody? Oh, okay, no questions. Very good. So we just have a look at this, thinking like an economist. This is just some extra way of looking at things. I just wanted to super highlight it and just make sure that we are on the same page. Every field of study has its own terminology. Like these are our terminologies like supply, opportunity, cost, elasticity, consumer surplus, demand, comparative advantage, and deadweight loss. Some of them we have already discussed. Economics trains you to think in terms of alternatives, as we discussed. Things a little bit complicated. Yes, of course, economics is a bit more complicated than leadership. Leadership is more of a skill that we all might have. Economics is it takes a bit of mathematical understanding and conceptual. A lot of it is conceptual. You have to imagine and understand the terms. So like all these factors that we discuss about fairness and competitiveness of the market, these are all beneficial to you, and end of the day, as a leader or as a manager, you will have to understand all these to be able to make decisions. So these will just make it easier, not make it more difficult for you guys. So I understand that it might be a bit more complicated, but look at it in this way, that it helps you to understand how market works. Because economics is basically a study of the market, whatever is being traded on the market, no matter what and no matter how. You will understand what are the principles of the market, what are the principles of the buyers and sellers, and how they work together, and how would you be able to make changes in order to get the results you want. So let's say if you're in an industry, let's say if you're in production industry, like let's say furniture production industry. So for you to be able to be successful, you need to understand how these basic fundamentals of economics work to be able to make the right decisions. I mean, people make decisions every day, and some of them, they have never heard of economics, or they have no idea how demand and supply or all these terms work. But what it is knowing all these will actually equip you to make better decisions. So when you're making decisions, or maybe when you're a leader, you know, leading your coworkers or team members or staff, you using these tools, you could probably help them, you know, succeed, or you actually run your business better, as you rightly said. So don't get scared off of economics. It's actually one of the sweetest subjects to study. It's really eye-opening if you get into it, and if you dig deeper, and if you study after each class. I really suggest and you know, encourage you to study slides, especially economics. Don't leave it until next session. Just whenever we finish, try to reread all these and reconsider and re-understand, and try to encapture and sort of digest what we talked about in the class. There's a lot of topics we're talking about in the slides. You do, as at least I'm sure you do have them as your PowerPoints on the YouTube, on our Facebook. You can at least watch with my explanation. I mean, it's just, you can just watch and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch as many times as you want, and that for sure you have. And if you haven't received the slides yet, which I will double check with the admin, it might be because of the copyright, but at least what you have is, for sure you have, is the YouTube version of or the Facebook version of the class, which is recorded and put in my LMS. So all these explanations that I'm giving, you have it there. You can always rewatch it, re-listen to it. You can download it on your computer or iPad or whatever, and just try to understand it better. So I definitely would take more time on this subject, because this is something that will change your perspective. Because just dealing with the market, we have done the marketing course and strategy and all these courses. Each of them has its own benefits. So economics would be the one which gives you the fundamentals, which would give you the basics. You know, a lot of other courses that we are going to discuss need some understanding of economics, like strategy that we studied last semester. Actually, now that you're learning economics, you will understand it better, because it sort of gives you the basics. And anytime you don't understand anything or you have a question, just stop me. I can just explain it to you. There is no problem. So if you want, just, and that's why I'm just refocusing on this explanation of economics, because I thought I did talk about it on the introduction session about economics and what it is, but I thought it's a good idea to re-explain and refocus on that for you guys, so you know why we are going through all these different topics and all these that they might look confusing. But actually what they're doing is they're telling you, as an economist, you will be thinking about alternatives. You will evaluate the individual and social choices, because we are now talking about as individual level and then social level, and understanding how certain events and issues are related. You know, the demand and supply. Every session we talk about something, and next session you see that we are referring back to marginal benefit, marginal cost, you know, all those, the value, the effectiveness of the market, all these factors and concepts that you're talking about in the class are actually interrelated. So basically, it's really important for us to understand why we need those. So you would be a scientist, like involving thinking analytically and objectively, and make use of scientific methods. All these methods that we tell you, and like formulas and all that, are scientific. These are like calculations, and I mean, they are not that difficult. They are basic, but they are the foundation of the future and later, you know, calculations. So scientific method like observation, theory, and more observation. So we use abstract models to help you explain how a complex real world operates, and also develop theories, collect and analyze data, and evaluate theories. A lot of what we are discussing are previous theories that they have become some models and you know, some rules for economics. So they might be complex, but they tell us how the world is operating and working. So the role of assumptions, we economics make assumptions in order to make the world easier to understand. Sometimes we make assumptions, we say, if nothing else changes, you know, so taking everything else, focusing on the price, and let's say on the quantity. So the art in scientific thinking is deciding which assumptions to make. Sometimes we need to make certain assumptions and not to make certain assumptions. So this is also very important. Economics use different assumptions to answer different questions. So sometimes in a scenario, you need to discuss about demand. So you need to focus on the customer. You need to take out from your mind other aspects to be just focusing on that certain scenario. So that's why you won't be actually assuming on other aspects, only on the consumer side in that scenario. And then economic models, we use models, we just learned a model today. Economics use a model to simplify reality in order to improve our understanding of the world. So two of the models that we actually learned, the basic models, are circular flow and production possibilities frontier. These are two actual models that we learned. So the first one, which is circular flow diagram, is a visual model of economy that shows how dollars flow through market among households and firms. So this circular flow is just a visual, and it shows you how the money is flowing in the market among the households and firms. And then, as you can see here, so markets, you can just say it starts from here. Firms produce and sell goods and services, hire and use factors of production. Then the goods and services, they're selling to the markets for goods and services. Firms sell it to households. Firms sell it and households buy it. And then goods and services bought will go to households. They buy and consume goods and services and own and sell factors of production. And then what happens is labor, land, and capital, all that will come back to the market for factors of production. And households sell, firms buy. So this is one way. The red one, the red arrow. The green one is how it works, where the firms again produce and sell goods and services the higher, and then the green for wage and rent and profit will be given to the markets for factors of production. And then that out of that, the income will be generated, come back to households. The households will earn that, they will spend, and out of the spending, the markets, goods and services, there will be some revenue given back to the firms. So you see the flow of dollars and the flow of inputs and outputs. So the green, the red one is the flow of inputs and outputs, and the green one is the flow of dollars. So as you can see, there is like a two-way relationship between the market. It's like a circle that goes and comes back. So one way is about the inputs and outputs in the market, which is like production inputs, like goods and services sold and bought, and land and labor and capital, which are the three basic resources in economics. So, and then that will show in money terms, which is wages and rents and profits, income, spending, and revenue. So all these are actually one of the ways of looking at things for economics. And in this way, firms produce and sell goods and services, hire and use factors of production. Households will buy and consume goods and services, and own and sell factors of production. Then markets for goods and services, like firms will sell and households will buy. Markets for factors of production, households will sell and firms will buy. So the services and factors of production and services are a bit different, like regarding the firms selling and households buying, or households selling and firms buying in the other sense, the next one. And then factors of production, the inputs and used to produce goods and services like land, labor, and capital. And then this one is the second way. Our second model is called the production possibility frontier. It's a graph that shows the combination of output that the economy can possibly produce given the available factors of production and the available production technology. So in this way, the production possibilities frontier is actually a graph. It's like just a graph and shows a combination of the outputs in the economy and possibly produced given available factors. So right here, as you can see, like we have the quantity of computers produced and the quantity of cars produced. So production possibilities frontier is having all the production underneath in the shaded blue, light blue area is our production possibility. We can produce all these at the same time, as you can see here. So going back to the explanation, is that graph was showing you actually a combination of outputs of the products. So using the available factors of production and available production technology. So all these different production that you have will give us a production possibilities frontier. So the concepts that are illustrated there is efficiency. Trade-off means that sometimes when you produce more cars, you have to produce less computers, like opportunity cost. We have talked about opportunity cost. We said that opportunity cost is what it costs you to produce more of a something. When you produce more of a something, you would get a lesser chance to produce the other thing. Let's say when you drink coffee, the opportunity cost of drinking coffee is not drinking, let's say, water or juice and all that. So that's actually a cost in economic terms. And then economic growth, we actually, one of our major goals is to have economic goals. So all these are, economic growth is basically here, we want this chart, this frontier actually grow further and go higher and higher, and we call it economic growth. but we have to keep in mind that our resources are limited. We have a certain number of resources, and so our growth is also limited, but it's possible. So as you can see here, from the blue to the sort of darker color curve line, we are growing. We want to grow. That's our goal. So we have microeconomics and macroeconomics. These are also some of the concepts we want to talk. So far, we have been focusing on microeconomics, which focuses on individual parts of the economics and economy. So how households and firms make decisions on how they interact in a specific market. But macroeconomics looks at the economy as a whole. So economy involves phenomena like including inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. So far we have been focusing on microeconomics, so we will be slightly shifting over to the next part, which is the macro, which is more of a economy-wide phenomena and inflation, unemployment, growth, and all that helps us to understand better economics as a whole, you know. So the economist as a policy advisor, when economists are trying to explain the world, they are scientists. But when they're trying to change the world, they are policy advisors. So as you can see, economists role play differently at different times. Sometimes they are just explaining things, and sometimes they are just trying to come up with some suggestions and advices. So these are according to different, you know, roles that they play. So positive versus normative analysis. Positive statements are statements that attempt to describe the world as it is, like descriptive analysis, like we tell you the world is like this way and demand is like that. Normative statements are about how the world should be, and those are prescriptive. Going back to that, advisors, policy advisors, in a sense that because at the macroeconomics level, they are policy advisors because they actually tell the governments how to do certain things. So business at the government level becomes politics. That's why they would be policy advisors. But for sure, business advisors too. But at business level, for our own businesses, we mostly need our scientist level expertise, because when you want to understand the market, you are basically looking at the microeconomics. And of course, like doing business with other countries and all that, definitely you need some understanding of the macroeconomics. That is really helpful too. And like getting back to the statements, there are certain statements that are just descriptive, describing what it is and how it works and everything. But normative is how it should be. So getting back to your question, business-wise, you would be able to understand your business the way it is, and being equipped with economics tool, you would be able to see and understand how it should be, and then you need to take the right business actions only. But for you to be able to understand what you should do, it actually takes a certain level of understanding of economics. So you would do positive and normative statements as a business advisor for yourself or for somebody else that you're working for. So positive or normative statements. And increasing the minimum wage will cause a decrease in employment among the least skilled. So that's a positive statement, right? Which is the way it is. Higher federal budget deficit will cause interest rates to increase. That's positive. It's just, it's a fact. It's the way it is. Positive or normative statements. The income gains from a higher minimum wage are worth more than any slight reductions in employment. So this is not done, but they say we should. They say the income gains from a higher minimum wage are worth more than slight reductions in employment. You know? So they say we should have higher minimum wage and any slight reductions in employment. Okay, and then state governments should be allowed to work from tobacco companies the cost of treating smoking-related illnesses among the poor. So these are like the way it should be, as you can see, and these are normative. And why do you think economists disagree? They may disagree about the validity of alternative positive theories about how the world works, or they may have different values and therefore different normative views about policy, about what policy should try to accomplish. So when you become an economist, you would come to a certain level of understanding. You will understand certain things differently, and you'll view it differently. That's why you will come up with the ideas which are not necessarily the same as other people, because you understand at a deeper level, especially business and economics. And that's how you will basically react and respond. Okay, so first, before I go to the next activity, I would like to see if you have any questions for me. Okay, any questions? Okay, so I want to show you a clip from Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2008. He's definitely someone that you want to know more about, and he's definitely someone that you want to look up his name, read his books. He is the one who actually has a lot of great ideas. So what I want to do is just to show you a clip, guys, about his, give me a second. So he will just give us some thoughts on what he thinks about economics. It's great to listen to that and try to understand. And to share my desktop. Okay, so let me just go ahead and okay. So volume.
FICA, the payroll tax. Okay.
Okay, good. Let's see what he says.
Well, I think you can't make sense of this world out there without knowing economics. I mean, how on earth can you even be a citizen without knowing at least a little bit about how such a thing is possible? How can it be that all of a sudden this world economy that was looking so productive 2 years ago has fallen into a ditch. I'm not sure how much economics, it might help you make better investments or make better, but mostly it's about being a citizen, about understanding the way the world works.
So macro versus micro.
Well, microeconomics is about understanding pieces of the economy, understanding why, if you want to know how is it possible, why did the price of food go up so much in early 2008? Microeconomics is when people say, well, our biofuels program is responsible for the high price of corn. You need microeconomics to understand those arguments to evaluate whether they might be right. Macroeconomics is about understanding what a recession is and understanding how it is that the economy as a whole can stumble. I think to be informed, you obviously have to understand both. You have to know at least the basics of interest rate policy, that's macro, and water policy or environmental policy, which are micro.
So balancing different viewpoints.
I don't think you can remove it. I think if you pretend to be completely apolitical, that you're faking it. What you can do is try to be fair. So I will often, if I'm talking about a subject where obviously there are political sides on the issue, I will say to students, you all know where I come from, and here's what somebody with my views would say, but there is an alternative view, and here's what it would look like. Students often have those too, but I just make sure, I make sure that I understand the arguments of the people I disagree with and try to represent them fairly. And in economics, the fact of the matter is 85–90% of what we do is not political. 85–90% of it is stuff that a very broad spectrum of opinion agrees about. And on the 15% that is political, I don't think the obligation is to pretend that you have no views. The obligation is to make sure that you're fair about the people who have a different view.
And then common and uncommon.
If you were going to ask the question, who pays a tax? Tax incidence. The question is, if we have a FICA, the payroll tax that has Social Security and the hospital part of Medicare. If you ask economists who pays FICA, part of it is paid by the employer formally, part of it is paid by the worker. Every economist says it's really all paid by workers. And that's because there's a basic analysis of tax incidence, and then you take a look at the supply and demand curves for labor, and everybody knows that this is the way that works. And there's really no disagreement about that. On the other hand, the question, how much would, how much impact would raising U.S. tax rates on high earners have on the economy? There is a view that says it's not such a bad thing, that not a whole lot of incentive effects, the view that I mostly share. But there are certainly people who view it quite differently and think it's a big problem. So some people think that high European unemployment is very much because of tax rates. I don't agree with that view, but make sure that I reflect it. So I'll give my students, here's one view, and here's another view. This is what Ed Prescott, Nobel laureate, says. I don't think he's right, but he has to be taken seriously. Here's what some other guys like trust a lot say. Why are they different? What things would make you decide which one to believe?
Okay. Let me just put this back. Okay, so let's stop sharing. Yes. Stop sharing. Okay. So that was about Paul Krugman and what he thinks of economics. Actually, he is his interviews is really good on different topics about economics. He's really one of the best sources of understanding. I really like the way he talks about different things. His viewpoints are really helpful, and he knows what he's talking about. So just want to show you another clip, which is also very, very nice. Okay. Okay, and this one is for the economics student. This is also very helpful when this is sure.
Have their own experiences, their own knowledge that you look at of stuff that I didn't know that just sort of deepens my own stuff. So actually, just the day before this interview, teaching a course, I talked about various U.S. social programs, and it turned out that some of the students had actually done work with mothers who were on TANF, the welfare program, temporary assistance to needy families, and they knew a lot more about what the reality of that program is than I did. I only knew it from academic papers. You know, students are real people. They have real connections. I think that's I find that the older I get, the more I actually enjoy teaching undergrads. I mean, when I was fresh out of grad school, I wanted to do was teach grad students about the latest brainstorm theory. These days, I get the most satisfaction out of talking to freshmen, sophomores, juniors who are bringing a fresh perspective to stuff. I'll tell you, when I started economics, when I went to grad school, what I thought was that the most important thing in the world was economic development, what it takes to make a poor country reasonably affluent. And I did not do it. Did not go into development economics. And the reason I didn't do it was that right then, this is mid-1970s, development economics was a very depressing field, but there were no success stories. Basically, in the mid-70s, the rich countries had been rich for generations, the poor countries had been poor for generations, and nobody actually crossed the line. And if I were going back to it now, I think I really would say, development economics is really exciting because now we do have success stories. Some countries, South Korea has gone from edge of subsistence to being basically a Western standard of living. China has moved from desperate poverty to what's still a quite poor country, but obviously growing progress. And so trying to figure out why those countries have done it but others have not, I think is really exciting, and the world is changing. Obviously also, of course, the business cycle, recessions and recoveries, there was a long period when that was unfashionable because, hey, we don't have big problems along those lines, and that's bad. what most of, I think, maybe about studying economics is figure out what you're interested in. There are lots of ways to be good in economics, different ways. Among the great economists I know, there are probably a dozen or more completely different intellectual styles. There are people who are totally diligent, looking at the nitty-gritty of the data, and wonderful insights come out of that. There are vast, sweeping thinkers. There are people who use very high-level math in ways that turn out to be extremely productive. So there's no formula. There are many different ways of doing it. I would say, for an undergrad economics major, you want to find the courses that are about things that you're interested in, and maybe also mix it with courses that are not about economics, but that expand your knowledge of the world. When I was an undergrad, I actually counted it. I took equal numbers of economics and history courses. No more economics and history, actually. So I loved history, and I actually find now, more than ever, that history is where you reach back to, you say, my God, what's happening in the world? I don't remember anything like this. But in fact, there were things like this before. You say, try to understand. You want to know about Credit Anstalt in Austria in 1931. You want to know about the Bank of the United States, also in 1931. So you want to talk about the Swedish bank rescue of 1993. All of these things you want to get. So that's my style. Right? I'm a historical parallels guy. But if it's something else, if you find that science, if you find that taking courses in science along with economics is what fits your mix, I think there's a certain thing of do the economics, but also do other things, because the cross-pollination among fields is a really big thing in making you an interesting economist. I'd say bear with it. It's not all going to be fun. You are going to have to learn about curves crossing and curve shifting, and you're going to have to, some of it's going to be tough and a little unnatural, but stay with it. I mean, there's profound insights into the world you live in, and getting there requires some homework. Getting there requires a little bit of suffering. If it was totally easy, we wouldn't need a course in it. The biggest misconception is that students think it's going to be about business, which it is to some extent, right? I mean, obviously we talked about what businesses do, and they're a little bit, but I think I guess students think that they're working there. Some of them think that they're going to be hearing stuff like what they hear on CNBC. They think they're going to be getting stuff about the stock market and business, and also they're going to be getting a lot of sort of canned stuff. Free market's good, government bad, or vice versa. And what they're actually getting, of course, is a framework. They're getting a whole discipline rather than that. And it's mostly, economists are not business people. Economists are people who try to understand how businesses and consumers and government interact to produce this world of work that we see around us. So the people who come in thinking they're going to get a course that is how to be the next Jack Welch or something like that are a little taken aback when the course actually unfolds.
Okay. Okay, very good. So let's minimize this. Let's stop sharing. Okay, I see here. Yes, of course, there are people in the class, and I don't know why people leave the class, but it's fine. I find these really helpful, and I was hoping that you will listen and carefully. This Professor Krugman is really one of the best economists in the world, if he is not the best, and what he was sharing is actually very true, and I just wanted to share with you guys. I think it's really helpful to understand what actually is to be expected from economics and from this course. And also, he was explaining a lot of the topics that I was talking today, generally on economics, and also how students of economics should look at different graphs and bars and all those that we learn in the class, how we are supposed to basically utilize them is, you know, using it in a sense to understand what's going on in the business and, you know, take right actions. So first, let's open up for any questions. Are there any questions so far? What I will do, I will also put that on the Facebook page of MBA so that you can go ahead and you know, look at those and okay. So each is connected in the middle of the class. Okay. So you guys are disconnected. So very good. The only thing for all the three of you who are in the class, I just want to give you some exercise. Okay. Maybe on this one. Okay, I want you guys to give me one normative and one positive statement, each of you. If you can write a normative and a positive statement. Positive statement being something that you attempt to describe, a normative statement something you prescribe and you say it should be like that. And I want it to be an economic statement, not just any statement. So please go ahead and do that, and while you're doing it, I'll also put these two clips on the website. Okay. We're in an era of great price. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's see. Okay, guys. So if you can just tell me what did you find? Well, what are your statements? If you could just write them down for me, that would be great. Write me a positive statement and a normative statement, please. Okay. So, could you please write a positive statement, which is a descriptive statement, and a normative statement, which is a prescriptive statement. Waiting for your answers. Can you guys hear my voice? Can you guys hear me? Okay, beautiful. Okay, it's right here. I need a positive statement, which is just a statement about describing what it is, what it actually is right now, and a normative what it should be. So if you could just write one of each, that would be great. Okay. So what you could just do is just email me a positive and normative statement, or positive and say normative economic statement. Okay, that will be your task. And if you don't have any questions, we can just finish the class. And I wish you a nice Nowruz and New Year. I'll see you next week. Okay, beautiful. Thank you.